Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everyday Hope and Simply Grace. Choose hope, embrace grace. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me for today's explainer because, well, we are diving headfirst into a topic that literally affects every single one of us, every single day. We're talking about money. But we aren't just going to sit here and crunch numbers or talk about dollars and cents. Instead, we are exploring a really profound difference, the massive gap between chasing a life that is merely easy and cultivating a life that is truly, deeply good.
So let's jump right into section 1. Welcome to Everyday Hope, and what I like to call the illusion of easy. You know, we live in a world that constantly sells us this illusion of easy, acting like a totally friction-free life is the ultimate goal. For example, picture the sheer misery of biking in the pouring rain. I mean, we've all had a moment like this, right? You're gripping the handlebars, your umbrella completely flips inside out, and the rain is somehow hitting you from angles you didn't even know existed. It's a real struggle. Now, look at the alternative. You just pull out your phone, tap a button, and boom, a perfectly climate-controlled Uber pulls up. Let's just be brutally honest here. Money undeniably reduces friction in life. It absolutely makes surviving easier. But here's the core truth we have to face next. Money reduces friction, sure, but it can never make your life beautiful. Yes, wealth can buy you a house so massive it practically requires its own zip code. You might literally have to text your kids just to tell them dinner is ready because they're way over in the east wing of the mansion. But while money can buy that incredible piece of real estate, it can never, ever buy the warmth, the love, and the deep connection of an actual home. It can buy you a super smooth commute to work, but it can't make you passionate about what you actually do when you get there. Money expands your options, for sure, but it cannot expand your soul. Moving right along to section 2, when money tells stories and the Zacchaeus reality. Dealing with this tension between wealth and emptiness, it's a really ancient problem. If money is just a tool, how are we using it? Seriously, ask yourself, what story is your bank statement telling right now? If a total stranger who didn't know you at all just sat down and looked at your expenses for the last 30 days, what would they conclude about you? Would they see a story of pure panicked survival, a story of vanity and just keeping up appearances? Or would they see a story of actual purposeful living? Because every single dollar you spend is a word in the narrative of your life. Which brings us to a historical guy named Zacchaeus. Let's look at his timeline for a second. Years ago, he was just this highly ambitious guy, probably a bit of an outcast because of his short stature, just trying to get ahead in a really harsh world. But later, he figured out a loophole. He became a chief tax collector for the Roman Empire. He essentially hacked the system. You see, the Romans required a set amount of tax, and anything extra he managed to squeeze out of people, he got to keep. So he built this massive mountain of wealth by legally extorting his own people. And that brings us to the final point on his timeline. He became incredibly wealthy, but universally despised. He traded his community, his relationships, and his reputation just to get that easy life. He had pockets full of endless wealth, but a heart that was just completely empty. Zacchaeus was surrounded by total luxury, but he was entirely alone. There was this massive black hole in his soul. And honestly, that is exactly why when he heard Jesus was passing through his town, this wealthy, powerful, arrogant guy did something completely undignified. He literally ran ahead of the crowd and desperately climbed up a tree just to get a glimpse of Jesus. He was looking for an escape hatch, a way out of the spiritual prison he had built with his own cash. And here's the crazy part. When Jesus spotted him up in that tree, he didn't condemn him. He didn't publicly shame him. He actually invited himself over to Zacchaeus' house. That single radical encounter completely flipped Zacchaeus' worldview. It shifted him from chasing an easy life to stepping into a good life. And making that transition requires 3 essential elements. Let's look at the 3 pillars of a good life: purpose, principle, and presence. Let's break these down, starting right at the top with purpose. Purpose is living for a mission that is way bigger than your own comfort. Listen, if your only goal in life is to just make your own existence slightly more comfortable, buy better food, drive a slightly nicer car, avoid a little inconvenience, you are going to end up incredibly lonely. True purpose invites other people in. I highly encourage you, sit down and write out your life goals. If you look at that list and every single item is only about you, it's time for a rewrite. A genuinely good life demands a mission that serves others. The second pillar is principle. You absolutely need a moral baseline so you can actually sleep at night. Look, ambition is great. I love seeing people driven to succeed. But climbing to the very top of the ladder means absolutely nothing if you have to step on people's necks to get there. If you acquire your wealth through betrayal, cutting corners, or trashing ethical boundaries, you will never, ever be able to enjoy the view from the top. You've got to have ethical boundaries in how you earn and how you spend. And the third, and honestly the most vital pillar, is presence. This simply means letting God hold your hand instead of white-knuckling your bank account. I'll share a quick personal story here. Years ago, when our first child was born, the topic of some pretty expensive postpartum care came up. I looked at the price tag and completely panicked. I actually tried to argue that it was a scam. I was being incredibly cheap, all because I was operating out of pure financial fear. I was white-knuckling our budget, terrified of letting go. But as we grew, we started inviting God's order and presence into our finances. We intentionally stopped holding our money with a clenched fist. And let me tell you, when you let God guide your resources, the peace and the abundance that follows is truly 100% life-changing. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when that presence really takes over. Because when Zacchaeus met Jesus, his heart completely transformed. Now, under the law back then, if you cheated someone, you basically only had to pay them back double. That was it. But Zacchaeus didn't sit there asking what the absolute minimum legal requirement was. No way. He stood up and declared he would give half his goods to the poor right then and there, and pay back anyone he cheated 4 times the amount. 4 times. Grace moved him to do infinitely more than the law ever required. He stopped being a slave to his wealth and finally became its master. All right, on to section 3, your life plus moment. Actionable truth. So how do we actually bring this ancient, radical kind of transformation into our modern everyday reality? Well, here is your practical challenge for the week. First, take 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, and actually write down your life's true purpose. And make sure it involves blessing someone other than yourself. Second, give a portion of your resources to God first. Not just the scraps or the leftovers at the end of the month when everything else is magically paid for. Put it first. I challenge you to try this for just 1 year. Give faithfully and just watch how your priorities miraculously realign. And finally, stop being a slave to financial fear. Let the story your money tells be one of wild generosity and faith, not just anxiety and hoarding. Which brings us to our final turn today. Embrace grace and let go. As we wrap up today's explainer, I really want to leave you with a deeply soulful appeal. Think about this. An open hand receives grace, but a clenched fist, it only holds fear. It is a profound truth, both physically and spiritually. Perfect love drives out fear. When you open your hands financially, when you consciously decide to be generous, to prioritize your principles, to bless others, you are making the ultimate invitation for God to step right into your life. You literally cannot receive anything new if your fists are tightly clenched around what you already have. So, I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative question. Are you actually ready to let go and let God hold your hand? Are you ready to stop exhausting yourself, chasing an easy life, and start stepping into a truly good, beautiful, and deeply purposeful life? I really want you to think about that as you go through your week, and let your bank statement start telling a brand new story. Everyday Hope and Simply Grace. See you next time.